take credit for this.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, and I do not necessarily want to take credit for it, but thank you. And did you taste the water? That's okay.
No,
All right, thank you.
I think we can
we're
pass
off it.
on
All right,
that.
guys. Okay, thank you, Alderman Lewitton. If there's nothing else, motion to adjourn. I believe there was a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None, and motion carries. Concludes this report.
I'm calling to order the Finance and Administration Committee meeting of October 14, 2010. Will the minute taker please reflect? All members are, same members are present, and I declare a quorum. Next item would be approval of minutes dated August 26, 2010. So I make a motion to approve. I'm just verifying the date. Yeah, it is August 26th. So I make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item would be a presentation on Prairie Fest 2010, and then discussion about how we handle going forward, as well as historical as well. So with that, Mr. Murmas?
Thank you, Chairman Winger. First off, there was a lot of hard work put into Prairie Fest 2010. So for that, I'd like to thank the City Council, city staff, city volunteers, other taxing bodies, most of all the residents and the non-residents who attended, because those are the people that really make the fest a success. So
And you too.
thank you.
You were a big part of it.
Thank you.
So thank you.
So tonight, what I'd like to do is kind of wrap up some budget numbers for 2010, as well as take a historical trip to the past to see how we've done and compared with previous numbers. As you can tell, this year in 2010, our total expenditures were $101,000. Our revenue and sponsorships were $88,000, so we did take a net loss of $13,000. We were trying to break even this year. We came pretty close. As you know, it did pour rain on Friday night, so that was a little bit of a hindrance on breaking even. So we might have actually broken even if it didn't rain. Next slide. But if you look at the historical breakdown, you can actually see, if you follow pre-Prairie Fest, I call that pre-Prairie Fest because that's, we didn't really have a big fest before 2009. So we used to actually have $30,000 in expenditures with a small fest. So then we had 115 in expenditures in 2009. We moved it down to 101 in 2010. So we had less expenditures in 2010. That was because the city actually took more control of the fest, and we weren't using the outsourced company like we had done in 2009, so we were able to cut expenses. We got, more used to doing the fest, and I anticipate if we do it next year, we'll actually get less than that for Prairie Fest 2011. Revenue, as you can see, pre-Prairie Fest, we only had $5,000. Basically, that was just for one or two sponsorships. Prairie Fest 09, we had $65,000 in revenue and sponsorships, and then in 2010 we moved all the way up to 88. So you see the profit loss totals. So we spent essentially $25,000 pre-Prairie Fest to have a really small fest. In 09 we ended up taking a loss of $50,000, and then in 10, when the city really kind of took control of the program, with the biggest fest we've ever had, we actually spent the least amount of money we've ever spent, which is only $13,000. So go to the next slide. This is just breaking down what I just said in a graph. I thought you guys might appreciate the graph representation up there. And the one you want to look at the top right is the goal next year for 11 would be to have that green bar even with the yellow bar, maybe even have the green bar a little bit higher. And hopefully on the bottom bar graph there, that number for 11, you'll see the yellow bar at 0 or above 0, hopefully. So that's really a wrap-up of the financial numbers from 2010 and the numbers from previous fests. So that would conclude my presentation on 10. if the council has any questions on 10, I'd be more than happy to answer them, and then we can move on to if we want to do it in 2011 or not.
Just a couple of questions. The day that it rained, was there any insurance reimbursement? Or
No,
did it-
I believe we had a quarter of an inch policy, and I think
help.
we made it to, yeah, we had a half inch and it rained a quarter inch.
Okay.
So we did not make the number.
Okay, and then we talked about 88,000 coming in. What would you say are some of the major revenue sources there that made up the 88?
Well, the biggest chunk of revenue sources was sponsorships. Staff and the elected officials had made it a priority to get as many sponsorship dollars as we could, and we really worked hard on that. So that was probably almost 2/3 of the money. Yeah, that was the biggest chunk was sponsorships.
Okay. And then what percentage would you say beverage did?
That's the second highest
Okay.
number, and then probably Carnival. So it's sponsorships, beverages,
2%.
Carnival.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Alderman Roy Wesley?
Just a compliment on Jeff on his work that he's done for this fest. I know he's put in numerous hours on staff time and his own time, so on behalf of the city as residents of Ward 2, I'd like to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we discuss next year? Okay. Regarding next year, Mr. Murmas is looking for input on how we want to handle next year. And I'm leaning towards repeating what we've done this year. It was definitely a success. Is there any input from other council members? Alderman Roy Wesley?
I don't know if we have the space, like we had a rain date, and everyone left as soon as the rain came. I guess it's talking about how to set up, not a setup, but to get a tent, to put tables under the tent like Itasca does. Is this the time to talk about it, or just permission to go ahead with this? Are you looking for input now?
I mean, really tonight, I was looking, we can have general comments, and we don't need to get down into serious details tonight. Tonight, I just want to know if you want to continue on with the fest next year, and then just general, quick hits, and we can do that, but I don't want to dig too deep into Prairie Fest. I mean, it is a while off yet, so I just need to make sure that we want to do it next year
Right.
and start preliminary planning, and then, we'll come back and we'll brainstorm.
Then I'll save my why off for later then.
Okay. Okay, Alderman Lewitton?
I had done a little canvassing in the immediate area and asked people to fill out a questionnaire about their opinion of the fest. And one of the questions I had on there was, did you attend the fest? And I noticed that those who gave a favorable impression on the survey and those, as opposed to those who did not give a favorable impression on the fest, were divided between those who attended and those who didn't attend. That's for your information. Second thing is, those who didn't attend complained about the noise from the fireworks. They thought that the fireworks were a little low and that they were sending sounds over Grove and Central. And the third thing is that people who didn't come were opposed to extending the hours of the fest to make up for the rain delay. And I think that you've got to do a couple of things. One is you either got to make more of an effort to get people locally to come that are in that areas so that they would have more of the favorable results on a survey. And I think you've got to take more proactive concern about the safety of the fireworks. And if we can get them so that the sounds are not going to the residential areas, but coming towards the fest, that would be a good idea. And then I think you just better have a policy ahead of time what to do with rain delay, whether to keep a band there, not keep a band. I was at the fest. I stayed for the rain delay. I thought it was great. It seemed like the people that last hour were really energized. But I do realize from that survey that people who weren't attending had a negative view of the extension. Don't have to discuss it. This is like for FYI, and we'll discuss it when you really get down to the nitty-gritty.
Alderman Cadella.
Yeah, I'm all for moving forward, just as we have in the past, particularly considering how many people I've talked to from town and outside of town who absolutely love this festival. The location, the program, the fact that it feels like a small-town festival. It's not fenced in like a lot of the other larger communities tend to do. So I'm all forward with moving ahead, and I know that, you know, the people I've polled certainly are as well. And then just one more comment, I have no reason to doubt that staff hasn't done absolutely everything necessary to ensure total safety with regards to the fireworks. Noise may be an issue, but I seriously doubt that safety is. Thank you.
Yeah, you are correct. I mean, we do follow all, policies and procedures with the Wooddale Fire District. We did check with them, so they clear the fireworks before they're blown off. They're out there all day watching the setup. They're out there right before they get blown off, and they're out there for the cleanup. I mean, we do follow all the rules on that, so.
One more comment. I'd like to revamp our selection process for what organizations are given what tasks to raise money. Like, we have the corn booth, we have beer, we have split the pot, and perhaps it's a drawing, where numbers go in a hat and each organization pulls. I don't want to hear the whole spiel about how, one organization was promised a year ago that they would get, and that's why we got it, and that I felt like there was some of that this year, and I want to eliminate that and make it impartial way of assigning different organizations to whichever fundraising is available.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll certainly look at doing that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, so I think that concludes that item for now. Did you
Yeah,
need
you know
anything
what?
else on that?
Can we do a motion just to approve moving forward with the 2011 Fest, and we'll put it on the council agenda, and I'll get started on that.
Sure, I'll make that motion. Is there a
Second.
second? Anything on the question? Alderman Shockey.
As long as we're talking about 2011 now, if we can some way, and I don't know if it's possible, make it more Wooddale friendly on Thursday. Again, I don't know if it's possible, but perhaps to have a limited time for the carnival on Thursday, and Wooddale residents, Wooddale children would get an armband and would not have to pay, something like that. I don't know if we'd need the food on Thursday. I'd like to see some local talent on Thursday rather than big-name bands. So it does, to make it Thursday at least, really a Wooddale occasion, and then go into the big stuff on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah, those are both good points, and believe it or not, way ahead of you on that one. We've already got a special treat for Wooddale residents planned for Thursday. Big discounts on the carnival and some other things.
Good.
So.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, so there was a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is report and recommendation on motor fuel tax audit reconciliation. Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Chairman Winger. Boy, there's no real easy way to go at this one. In 2007, Illinois Department of Transportation came out and did their audit of the city's use of its motor fuel tax monies. And in accordance with that, they checked to see if we had passed the appropriate resolutions in order to properly appropriate the funds that we were using. After they had completed their field work, later on in 2007, Mr. Holm, former Public Works Director, passed a number of resolutions covering the period of 2003 to 2007. Unfortunately, in 2010, we received the results of the audit, and apparently there were a number of issues from the 2002 MFT audit that former Public Works Director, before Mr. Holm, had not properly addressed. At that time, myself, Mr. Graff, and Mr. Kramer got together, had a meeting about it. This appeared to be more resurfacing things, general maintenance things, which would fall kind of more into the purview of Mr. Graff. And so he and I kind of split it up. He took the lead on it. Unfortunately, as you know, he is no longer with the city of Wooddale. So it fell on me to figure out what he had done and pick it up and move forward. Since that time, I've been in contact with a representative from Local Roads at IDOT here in Schaumburg numerous times. I was able to get the requisite paperwork to cover the ones you have before you on the second memo that I sent out this past Tuesday with the attached resolutions that need to be approved. And in fact, since I sent this out Tuesday, I've actually been able to work with them to get 3 of them removed from needing to get the resolutions passed. We can actually pull those out of this conversation for now. There are a couple of other items, as I mentioned, that are still kind of lingering. I have documentation to them. She's working with the MFT auditor currently to get those resolved. There may be an additional resolution we need, but she's checking to see if we can do it without one or if we need to pass one. I guess the good news is this is going to get the vast majority of it cleared up. It's going to show IDOT that we do intend to work with them to clear this up, that, we want to be in compliance with their rules and regulations, show a good face on our part and our willingness to work with them and vice versa to continue the ability to use these monies for future roadway projects going forward.
Thank you. Alderman Cadella?
It's not my intent to throw any gasoline on what might be a slightly smoldering fire, but I have to ask the question, what's the worst-case scenario? Would we have to pay anything for any portion of this? If IDOT doesn't accept the resolution that's necessary?
The amounts listed here have already been paid out of the MFT fund for these various projects. Worst case scenario, if they don't, like we've done, or if they don't agree it was an eligible use for anything, we would have to reimburse the MFT fund either through the general fund or the capital projects fund. That is worst case scenario. If we don't pass any of these resolutions, the other alternative is to reimburse the MFT fund through other city funds.
Thank you.
Alderman Roy Wesley?
You just said through what? The general fund?
They don't explicitly list what it would be through. It would be typically the other source of large revenues would be the general fund, or in our case, the capital projects fund. So we could probably choose either one to reimburse the MFT fund through. But like in speaking with IDOT, these resolutions will resolve that, so that shouldn't be an issue for these projects.
Could I go on?
Sure.
This has been going on since 1996, 14 years ago. Who's responsible for this? As far as I'm concerned, our city manager is responsible for the funds and watching this stuff. Who's not doing their job?
The ones that are still open right now, on the memo that I sent you from Tuesday, are from 96 to 02, which would have been items that would have come out of the 2002 MFT audit, which, not to do any bust-throwing here, but that would have been the former Public Works Director Craig Wright and former manager Brad Townsend would have been the 2 that were on the watch when these items would have been presented during the MFT audit of 2002. Why they weren't addressed at that point, I don't know. I did find a file courtesy of Mr. Kramer from Mr. Holm, and he had some notes in there to IDOT saying that it was his understanding that all this stuff from the 2002 audit had been cleared. Obviously, a couple months ago, we found out that wasn't the case, and so now we're moving forward as well as we can, albeit 14 years later, to resolve these in a positive fashion.
Okay, if you can try and sum up at this point.
Well, okay, we got to 2006. We're 7, 8, 9. Where are those?
We got the 2006 one has been resolved. Part of the conversation I'm having with IDOT right now is kind of the out years from 2007, working with them to see, because some of the money that we have coming out is just for street light repair. That's kind of free and clear. The salt money and some of the other things we may have to go back and do a resolution on, somewhat, a couple of years back. But that's part of this process that we're talking with them right now, is to see if the salt that we've been purchasing, we have to pass a resolution for, or if that's just kind of covered under the blanket authority of the MFT funds.
So when did you actually find out about this?
In July.
So why weren't we informed right away on this? I mean, we're talking 14 years here. This is ridiculous. This is insane.
I agree. I mean, when I saw the report and it was 14 years ago, I immediately, talked to Dave and we contacted IDOT to see why in 2010 we found out about a project from 14 years prior.
It just doesn't make sense that we have professional staff and we're looking at things 14 years ago. And this is crazy. This is what gets you in big trouble with the state, federal government, and we have a city manager that's supposed to be watching this stuff and bring it to our attention immediately. I'm done.
Is there any other questions, comments on MFT audit? Anything? Okay, so at that point, Mr. Wilson, are you looking for a motion to recommend adoption of the resolutions within this memo?
Correct. There are 3 that, as I mentioned, IDOT has cleared us on already. So we won't need to approve those because, like I said, IDOT's already accepted those. The third one down, section 01,
Yep.
00041, that one's clear.
Okay,
The first one of the next section, the 97 GM, is clear, and the very last one, the 06 GM, has also been cleared.
okay, so when I make my motion, I will state the 6 that are within it, just as you did, like section 96 RS. Is that sufficient?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and do you need me to state the dollar amounts in the motion? I can, it's not a big
Yeah,
deal.
that'd be appreciated. That way we make sure we get them on the full council agenda correctly for IDOT purposes.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion to recommend to city council the adoption of the following motor fuel tax resolutions. Number 96 RS for $99,360.23. Number 97 RS for $72,840.21. Number 99 GM for $49,789.87. Number 00 GM for $75,545.76. 01 GM for $19,418.26. And 02 GM for $101,648.04. Is there a second?
Second.
And the question, Alderman Wesley.
So what happens to the 135,000, 40,000, and 173,000?
Mr. Wilson?
That paperwork had been resubmitted in prior weeks, and I just got word from IDOT yesterday, actually, that they approved that paperwork that we had sent them, and so they've already cleared them off of their list of items that are outstanding. So those have been resolved.
Okay, I hope in the past, in the future, that we don't have this happen again. So
Uh,
if you don't want to bring it to my attention, city manager should bring it to my attention. Someone should, because I'm not going to be as calm next time.
No, absolutely, and I've spoke to Mr. Kramer about this as well, and we have no intention of of anything like this happening again in the future, so.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is a return item fee ordinance, a report and recommendation. And Mr. Wilson?
Chairman Winger. This came up when we were preparing actually the next item on the agenda. We actually referenced the $25 returned item fee that we currently charge downstairs for bounce checks. However, the check is bounced, be it NSF, refer to maker, account closed, account frozen, anything of that nature. In having legal review the next item on the agenda, they gave me a call and they said, well, you need an ordinance to establish this fee. I informed that we've been charging this fee before I started here, probably, and I believe even before a couple of my employees started here. And it was noted that we should codify that fee just so it's, official, if you will. And so Mr. Conway from Bond Dixon made the recommendation that we codify this fee. It is a current practice. It's not anything new. We're just trying to codify a current practice.
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion, look for a second, and then I'll call a question. I'm going to make a motion to recommend adopting an ordinance codifying the return item fee and creating section 1.510 of the city code to do so. And there is a second. On the question, Alderman Lewitton?
I'd like to strike out one of the penalty clauses. I don't think we should fine anybody if it has to do with the conversion of bank checking. There have been 2,900 approximately banks that have gone bankrupt in the last 4 years, and they've been taken over by other banks, and there have been mergers and consolidations. And when this happens, there's a runoff time on existing checks, and honestly, consumers pay no attention to it. I think if it's found out that the check was a valid check when it was delivered to the customer, but the bank has stopped accepting the ancient routing, that we waive it because the money was there. They thought the money was usable. They didn't know the checks had become outdated. So if that's the case, I would like an exception to the fee to be waived for people who are asleep at the water fountain.
Can we add that to the code? Mr. Wilson?
Certainly, yeah, I'll talk to our attorneys to get that in there. Just informationally, we do already do that, especially with all the mergers and things that have gone on. Especially this comes up more with the auto debits where the banks have merged, and they just don't tell us, and our bank keeps processing them. So in a case where it's a bank conversion, yes, we do waive that fee. We don't charge them the fee for that. Additionally, if it's a case of fraud or theft or something like that, and they can provide documentation that they had to close their account due to fraud, theft, I'm trying to think, there's one more. If they can provide documentation that it was not in, if it wasn't intentional, if it wasn't their fault, for lack of a better term, then we do go ahead and waive that for them, just, out of good faith to the resident, or the customer.
I believe the term has just hit my brain. It's a legacy check. So put in there that fees will be waived on legacy checks.
Okay. Thank you for adding that, Alderman Lewitton. I agree that that's important. Is there anything else? Okay, there's a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the follow-on item to this discussion, policy on payment acceptance. And with that, there is an outline suggesting the policy. And are there any questions, comments from the council here? Okay, then at that point, thank you for the work in drawing this up, and it is a good way to refer back to whoever's working the window on how to handle these circumstances. So I'm going to make a recommendation passing a resolution adopting the policy on payment acceptance and returned items. Is there a second?